Hey, welcome back to the channel. With the new school year coming in just a couple weeks, I thought it'd be really fun to get into one of those really gnarly theory topics. So today we're going to get into augmented sixth chords. We're going to talk about what they are, how to spell them, and how to resolve them and voice lead with them. They're really cool chords, and they tend to be one of the more trickier subjects or topics in music theory classes. So let's get into it. Okay, so what exactly are augmented sixth chords? Well, augmented sixth chords are a particular kind of chord that approaches the dominant in a lot of classical tonal music. They are a class of chords. There's 3 different types of them, and all of them share some basic commonalities, where they have an augmented sixth interval between the lowered 6th scale degree and the raised 4th scale degree. So that does make a 6th, and because you have one lowered tone and one raised tone, that 6 becomes augmented. And we do spell them this way because the voice leading takes this augmented 6th interval, resolves it outward, each of them outward by step to resolve onto the dominant. And so that's why we use that interval. And so the 3 different types of these augmented sixth chords are Italian, French, and German. Now, to my knowledge, there's no real reason why we associate these particular countries with these augmented sixth chords. Those are just the names we have, and so they kind of stuck. Put in the comments below if you think that either of these are particularly associated with their country in any kind of meaningful way. I'd really love to hear about that. Okay, so like I said, all 3 of these chords serve as a predominant function, so they move to the dominant chord. And so when we're trying to spell them, it's really important to think about how the tones of the augmented sixth chords are kind of relative to the tones of the dominant chord. They really do move, and this is kind of a voice leading chord. So it really helps to think about how are the notes of these chords approaching the notes of the dominant. So that's kind of an important aspect for voice leading. When it comes to spelling these, what they all 3 have in common are 3 tones. Okay, they have the lowered 6th scale degree, the tonic, and the raised 4th. Now, just a note, when I say lowered 6th scale degree, I'm talking about the 6th scale degree that is in the minor scale. But since these chords are used in both major key pieces and minor key pieces, we'll talk about the lowered 6th scale degree, just so that if you're in a major key piece, you have to remember to lower that tone. In a minor key piece, when these are used, you don't have to do any kind of accidental adjustments to that 6th scale degree because it's already lowered in the key. The sharp 4 definitely always has to be adjusted though. So all 3 of them, the Italian, French, and German, they all have lowered 6th scale degree, tonic, and the raised or sharp 4th scale degree. That is actually the only notes that are in the Italian version of the augmented sixth chord. The French augmented sixth chord has one additional tone, and that's scale degree 2. And then the German has the scale degree 3, or flat scale degree 3. So remember, this is the scale degree from the minor key, and if you're using it in a major key, you just have to remember to make it flat. So let's take a listen to how each of these sound in context. So I'm going to actually take these chords and resolve them to a dominant, and you'll see that with the German augmented sixth chord, we have to approach a particular kind of dominant, so we'll talk about that. So let's work out an example of the Italian augmented sixth chord. We're going to take this progression: minor 1, Italian augmented sixth, 5, 1. It's pretty simple, and it shows that augmented sixth chord in the position of a predominant, so it approaches our dominant. The lowered 6th scale degree is going to move down by step. The raised sharp 4 moves up by step. Now, because these 2 tones have a particular tendency to resolve, they are tendency tones, and so we avoid doubling these. That means that the other tone of the Italian augmented sixth chord, the tonic, will get doubled by the other two voices. So then we move directly to our 5 chord with those two tones, the two voices that are on the tonic. One moves to the scale degree 2, one moves to the leading tone, and then we can just resolve that 5 chord as needed. So this is a really kind of conventional resolution of the Italian augmented sixth chord. It's pretty similar with the French augmented sixth chord, but I want to show you an example with the German augmented sixth chord because this particular chord has a real tendency to resolve instead of directly to the 5 chord, but instead to a Contextual 6/4 chord. And I'll show you why. When we spell the, let's do this chord progression: 1, German augmented sixth chord, 5/6/4, 5/7/1. So just as before, we're going to have lowered 6 in that augmented sixth chord. We're going to have the raised 4th in one of the upper voices. And then the other two tones are scale degree 1 and flat 3. Now, if we were to move directly to a 5 chord, lowered 6 scale degree moves down by a half step, lowered scale degree 3 moves down by a half step, and we'd get parallel 5th. So we tend not to see it move directly to the 5 chord just to avoid that. So instead, what composers tend to do is they move to a cadential 6/4 chord. Remember, that's the notes of the tonic triad in second inversion, but since it's a dominant sound, we call it a cadential 6/4. And then it can resolve to the 5 chord or the 5/7, which we often see. And so that's what we have here. Okay, so I want to show you the kind of sound of this chord in context now. I have this really, one of my favorite selections from a Beethoven sonata. He loved these chords. And I want to play for you just a short little excerpt of one of the movements from his sonata number 30 for piano. Did you catch the augmented sixth chord? It was right there before the final 5 chord. I love this because we actually have a great example of the German augmented sixth chord approaching 5, and Beethoven does some little sleight of hand, so he doesn't actually have to resolve to a cadential 6/4 chord first by kind of switching the voices in the inner voices. Let's listen to that ending one more time. So this has been a really quick rundown on the augmented sixth chords. Are there other chords, chromatic chords perhaps, that you want me to cover in a future video? If so, put those in the comments and I'll consider making a video on those. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe so you get access to these videos every single week. And thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.